Okay, so that would be helpful if I would turn on the projector. We've already talked about a fair amount so far, and I hope that you can appreciate is that gait or walking is maybe more complicated and a much more difficult skill than any of us probably properly realize. We probably take it for granted, okay? It's been in the last sort of year and a half as I've watched my daughter go from not being able to walk, being able to walk very unsteadily, to now she basically is a sprinter and all of that. You can really begin to appreciate the acquiredness of the skill that is gait, how it changes, how it can improve. And then conversely, as I've watched my parents get older, you watch things change kind of back in the other direction. Okay. So typically when we measure gait, we're going to start from a seated position. You've got to stand up, propel yourself forward, maintain balance. There's going to be some direction changes in response to a change in environment. You have to be able to stop. And so a lot of people don't often consider this as part of things. Stopping is also really important. Okay? When we walk, I want to briefly introduce you to the leg positions and kind of how we analyze these things. Okay? So when you go through a gait cycle, we are talking about sort of taking one step or a stride with each foot or with each leg. Okay? We divide a gait cycle, and typically with walking, you are going to be, each leg is going to be as it moves in what we call stance phase about 60% of the time, and swing phase about 40% of the time. So stance phase consists of when that foot is in contact with the ground, that is stance phase. Okay? When the foot of that leg is not in contact, that's termed swing phase. Okay? So when I'm going to take a step, as our woman here is going to do, you will note, right? If we look at basically what she is doing, she has landed with her right foot. Her heel has made contact with the ground. We call that heel strike. Okay? We go from heel strike, which starts stance phase. Then I'm going to propel the body forward. My weight goes over that foot. Okay? I'm then going to reach forward with my opposite leg. It's going to get to heel strike. There's going to be a little bit of time that we call double stance phase because both feet are in contact. And then I'm going to push off through my toes, which is called toe off. Then I begin swinging, and I swing forward, and I'm in contact again. Okay? So there's this very distinct sort of actions that happen with the legs, actions that happen with your foot being in contact in the ground, and this kind of repetitive muscle contractions that are going to need to cause all of that that we involve things that control the foot, things that control the movement at the knee and at the hip, not to mention all of the upper body stuff that we're going to have. Okay? So I want you to know very generally stance and swing. I don't care about you knowing all of this other stuff in terms of like weight acceptance and single limb support versus double limb support and mid stance and terminal stance. I just want you to know what stance and swing are and some of the major events that occur there. Heel strike to toe off is stance. Okay? Toe off, then back to heel strike is swing. That's what I want you to take away from all of this. Okay? And so you have a stance and swing with each leg for every step that you take. Okay? So Typical lower body-ish muscles that we're going to use for walking are going to be the TA, what Dr. Pinku is calling, because he's an animal researcher, what he calls the triceps surae, which are the gastroc, both heads of the gastroc and the soleus, which are the plantar flexors, okay, which are here on the back, the hamstrings, the quads, and then potentially some glute med. It's going to help us a little bit with some hip flexion that's going on. Okay, but in general, what we don't always think of is the role that the TA and the gastroc and the soleus play in letting us pull our toe back as we come forward so we can get to proper heel strike, and then to flex up through our toes as we get to toe off. There are some diseases, okay, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, stroke patients, as people age, as they lose function in the TA and in their gastroc and their soleus, then their foot mechanics are going to become different. And that makes it much more difficult for them to be able to walk. Okay? So it's not just what we think of as quad, hamstring, glute, kind of upper, big, strong leg muscles. There's a lot of kind of foot mechanics that go into this as well. Okay? So we can do gait analysis by watching somebody walk and making some interpretations or drawing some conclusions based upon certain criteria. Okay? We can watch, what does their stance phase look like? What does their swing phase look like? Where is their weight? What are they doing with their feet? What are they doing at their knee? What is their upper body doing? Where is their center of balance? Okay? You can make this really, really, really complicated if we want to. But you can also just make it a person can stand up, they can walk a few steps, they can hold their balance, they can turn around and come back, and it takes them this long to cover that much distance. Okay? So you can look for what we kind of this basic stuff, which is temporal spatial. Foot angle, base width, how wide are their feet, how fast are they walking, how many steps are they taking, kind of what is their stride cadence, okay? What is their step or stride length, okay? There's some very simple changes that occur with these things that people have issues. We could, if we wanted to, make it even more advanced by looking at the sort of energetic side of things or the kinetic side by measuring forces. People will, and I guess I should have asked Dr. Campbell if we could have borrowed his, but in some labs, they have a floor, they have an area cut out, and they have a force plate put down on the floor, and you walk and you step on it, and it measures how much force do you apply when you get to heel strike? How much force do you apply as you push up? How long are you in contact with the ground? Okay? And that can tell us some things about how well or not so well you're walking. We could do 3D motion analysis and get at what we call kinematic things. So it's like how far are the joints moving? Okay. This is the idea where like they put you in like sort of a black sort of spandex suit or a green spandex suit, and they put little reflective dots on at certain muscles and on either sides of certain joints. And you walk or you run or you do something, and there's this big sort of setup of somewhere between like 7 and 14 or 15 cameras, and they track, okay, they track the movement of the little reflective balls that they put on you. And then it generates sort of self-made bones and things in between there, and it captures you in real time as you walk, and it can tell us about how far is your knee joint and how much flexion and extension are you getting at the knee, what's its velocity. You can do some really, really cool stuff by doing all of that. Problem is those camera systems and their software are very, very expensive. Okay? You can do some very simple stuff with that, like with your phone. There's some very simple kind of analysis software. You can download an app. You can video somebody with your phone. And you can stop and you can put a little dot at their hip and draw a line down to their knee and then draw a line down. It will track that line for you and do some things. So you guys will do a little bit of that kind of stuff if you take biomechanics with Dr. King. Okay? We can look at some other kind of things as well if we really want to get into all of this. Here's this 3D sort of motion cap stuff that we can do. And you can figure out like what is, here's the time thing. This is going to be sort of the flexion or extension at the knee joint, and it can generate these kinds of stuff. Lots of really cool, really advanced things if we want to do it that way. Here is a little less of that. They've got these reflective devices that you can put on, like on your wrist and on your upper arm and your shoulder. So that you don't necessarily have to do quite as much. So we talked about this, and this is the really, really important thing. Okay, changes in gait may represent changes in physiological, psychological, behavioral things that are going on in your life. Okay? All of you will change how you walk from here as you age. Okay? If you have an injury, you hurt your ankle, you hurt your knee, you hurt your shoulder, you hurt your low back. Okay? All of these things may have knock-on effects on how you walk. And so that makes walking a kind of very, very valuable assessment for determining where somebody might have some impairments. Okay? So you can have vascular problems, you can have cancer, you can have other neurological issues with like depth perception, vision problems, hearing problems. All of these things can have some effect on walking. Okay? So I haven't asked any of you guys to do this, but I assume anybody have difficulty rising from a chair? Okay, just wait, it will happen. Okay, it's coming. Don't worry about it. Okay, but think about your grandparents or great-grandparents if they are alive and how they get out of a chair versus how you might get out of a chair. Okay, and so this is going to tell us about balance. It's going to tell us something about strength or muscle weaknesses if you have difficulty getting up and out of a chair. Watch people walk. Can they walk in a straight line, or do they weave around? Okay, like maybe they went to Logies and had a couple too many drinks. Okay, so you guys want a fun thing to do? You have Dr. Larson. Ask Dr. Larson about the time that she left Dr. Mike and Dr. Deb. Have these big year-end like Christmas parties and things. Ask them about the time that she stepped off the curb incorrectly and that broke her ankle. So fun times. Impairments in gait, okay? But there can be things. Is your balance off, okay? My wife can't walk in a straight line to save her life. She gets looking this way, and she comes over here, and she walks over there. I don't think she has an impairment, but she doesn't have sort of great spatial awareness, okay? If people walk with a widened base, okay? You widen out your stance, you widen out your feet, that means you probably have some kind of balance issue. You're trying to compensate for a lack of balance by widening out your base. Okay? So those are going to be things there. We can also talk about what we call shuffling gait. Somebody mentioned that in one of your assessments, right? Are you taking these little baby steps where you just kind of shuffle around? Okay? Again, that may be indicative of muscle weakness. It may be indicative of impairments in some neurological side of things, perception. A thing we call postural sway, which is just, I may be on balance, but I'm sort of swaying back and forth. My feet are down, but I'm leaning one way, I'm leaning the other way. Okay, how's that going? And then, what's my walking speed? Do I start off slowly and then speed up? Am I generally slow? I get in trouble with my wife. I walk very slow. Okay, I walk very slow. I don't want to walk fast. That seems dumb. Why would I want to walk fast? I want to, like it's summer and she gets out and I call it, she walks what I call ramming speed. It's just as fast as she can go. I'm like, oh, I'm sweating, right? I'm very prissy. It's okay. I have no worries about all of that. But I walk slow by choice, not out of necessity. Okay, not out of necessity. But if you've got pain, if you've got disease, if you've got weakness, then you may have some things that are going on. Okay? So people that have issues from fibular nerve injuries or multiple sclerosis, if you have a hard time, especially controlling your TA, you may have something called steppage gait. which rather than kind of walking where I go out and I point my toes back at myself to get the heel strike, I walk like I'm marching, okay? I'm picking up my feet to move them forward because I can't pull my toes back enough to clear my toes as I come through during swing phase, okay? So this is called steppage gait, and it is a hallmark of stuff that goes on with multiple sclerosis. They have lots and lots of issues with this. Okay, so you guys don't have to know any of these common gait disorders. I'm just going to present some of them. If you want to go and look them up, you can find videos about all of this. But these are things that may be very applicable to you someday if you want to be a physical therapist or an occupational therapist or a physician's assistant or something. You're going to see people that will come in, and you may have to try to assess what is wrong with them, what are the things they can and can't do. And so some of all of this is going to be, and a lot of these are going to look the same when you watch them, but they may all come from kind of various. Okay, talk about this. There should be, I don't know if all of these links are still live. I don't know, we haven't checked since the fall if YouTube has removed any of these things. It should take you to some really funny, kind of classic old YouTube videos that are going to kind of show what these things are going to look like. Okay, the changes in gait aren't funny, but kind of the setup, and it looks like it's from 1975. I was kind of chuckle. Okay, so let's talk really, really quickly about some changes that happen with aging. So as you age, we tend to walk less, we tend to walk slower. We have a shortened step length, okay, and a widened stance. So I go slow, my stance is wider, and I don't step quite as long. Much of this is driven by decreases in strength and decreases in balance, okay? So you may also see where people are going to begin to walk a little bit more so with their toes pointed out, okay? Toes walking out like this, a little wider, and I'm doing this, shuffling along. That's going to help me from a balance perspective. Okay? That's going to help me from a balance perspective. Okay, so we lose balance because we're not as strong. Okay, we may have changes in posture that are also going to throw us off a little bit. They're going to walk slower, potentially because they've got a decreased aerobic capacity. But for a lot of people, it's not that they can't make enough energy to walk. They're still just walking. Okay, so it may be confounded by poor vision, fears of falling, things like that. Weirdly, if you do these assessments, the clothes that people wear can matter. Okay, if they have clothes that are too tight and aren't letting you move around, or clothes that are too loose, they're going to cause some problems. You may change how you walk. Okay, think about, you may not think about those things, but also like footwear. Okay, ladies, think about, I know you probably don't do this anymore, right? It's been a pandemic, but if you're wearing heels, right? You change how you walk in heels. Okay, guys, if you want to try something, put on a pair of heels. I'm not kidding. Okay, ladies, I don't know how y'all walk in heels. It's crazy. Okay, but footwear matters. Or try walking in a pair of sandals versus a pair of running shoes. And so you're going to change those things around. So we want to make sure if we do an assessment that people have the right clothing and the right sort of footwear, and they're in kind of a safe environment. We have a piece of equipment that measures balance over in the other building, and it has a harness on it. You can put a person in the harness, and then it sways you from side to side, but then it also has this little board that has like seams on it, and the computer screen that shows stuff that kind of wraps around you. And so it can change your bottom. It will move the board forwards and backwards to kind of change your perception. And sometimes it does both at the same time. And it can really sort of throw you off a little bit. And the folks that have trouble, we put them in the harness, and that way they're safe. They can lose their balance, and we're going to catch them, and they're not going to fall over. Okay. So, okay, talk about those things, impacts. It's just what you think. They're less mobile, they fall more, decreased quality of life. they're going to bump their head, they might have to go into the hospital, right? Need for long-term care. People that can't walk, okay, need assistance. And that's a really, really big deal. Physically, monetarily, psychologically, okay? It's really important that we be able to maintain the ability. Okay, so what is a normal, what they sometimes call a senile gait? So senile in this instance meaning people that are a little bit older and you're having and sort of showing some impairments. Your speed is slower, it's less than 1.4 meters per second. Slowed postural support response. They put you on that machine and it sways you and you have to get yourself back to balance. That will slow down, shorter steps, increase time and double limb support. So these are kind of some normal changes that are going to happen. Okay. The last little bit is that it's pretty easy to use walking. We're just practicing gait as therapy. In people, you can get stronger, more flexible, right? You're going to see better physical function, especially in people that are 60 years of age. Okay. Let's see if there's anything else that we have that's going on here, right? Like we can do step length. This is what we used to do when we did the lab this way. So don't worry, you're not going to have to do this calculation or anything on the test. Okay. Pick out a comfortable walking speed. You guys, many of you probably have a watch or something that measures your daily walking distance, tells you how many steps to get. We know your stride length, we know how many steps you take, we can calculate how far you walk every day, and then it also knows the time you spent doing that, so we can calculate how quickly you were moving, and then that can give us some information. Okay, so the real big take homes is appreciate that gait is a useful thing for us to measure. It involves lots of muscles, not just the lower body muscles. Okay? Know what stance and swing are. Know that the balance is really important in the midst of all of that, and we can use it as both a diagnostic and a training tool. Okay? All right. So what I'm going to do for lab is, it will probably be tomorrow before I can get to this. It might be later this afternoon. I'm going to take the numbers that you gave me, okay, and I'm going to match you up with a person in the previous class. And then we'll use that to give you skin folds. You'll use those skin folds to do your calculation.